science can be really exclusive, and it can be really eye-opening, and it can also be really intimidating.
When we look at the global drivers and distributed impacts of climate change, it would be easy to get discouraged. And we can't afford to. We can't afford to be discouraged because people don't take action from a position of discouragement. They take action from a position of hope.
You just listened to Susie, Perez, Quinn and Dr. Karen Germain. Hey SpaceWatchers, this is Space Café Radio, your channel about trends, great people and awesome events. We are in Oslo on day 3 of the Global Space Conference on Climate Change in May 2023, and we got the very unique opportunity to get Susie, Perez, Quinn, NASA's Chief of Staff, Dr. Karen Germain, NASA's Divisional Director of the Earth Science Division in the Science Mission Directorate, you listened to them already, and Dr. Kate Calvin, NASA's Chief Scientist and Senior Climate Advisor in one room for this interview. When this conversation finally happens, you forget about the coordination and technical issues and how nervous I was before we hit the record button. But I got help from our Editor-in-Chief, Dr. Emma, ex-NASA scientist on her own, who speaks the language. This radio episode is part of a joint collaboration between SpaceWatch.Global and the Norwegian Space Agency. Our collaboration focuses on creating tangible outreach for GLOC while highlighting the commitment of the space industry to combat the climate crisis. This mini-series will explore the several approaches space is taking for climate change action, its significance for the society as well, of course, as its practical results, challenges and evolution into future applications. I'm Torsten, publisher of SpaceWatch.Global. Enjoy our conversation. We are here at the third day of the GLOC 2023 in Oslo, and I say we because Emma and I do this interview together, have the great honor to sit together with the combined female power of NASA. In particular, we have the head of staff, Susie, Perez, Quinn, with us. We have Karen Germain, the director of Earth Science, and we have Kate Calvin, the chief scientist and senior climate advisor here in the room. Hello and welcome. And with me is our wonderful Dr. Emma.
Hello, SpaceWatchers. Welcome. We're really looking forward to have this incredible discussion with 3 very powerful and very insightful women. So thank you very much.
So let's kick it off. We hear over the last days on the conference floor very often the terms of user data are not available, we have to be active now, and we need more international cooperation. Does these buzzwords, topics resonate with you?
Absolutely. So, we're thinking a lot about accessibility of information and user needs in everything we do.
A very short insert here to introduce you to Dr. Kate Calvin. I will mention the names of our speakers when they talk to make it easier for you to connect voices to names.
2023 is the year of open science at NASA, and part of that is trying to communicate to the world the value of open science, teach them how to do open science, but then with our own science, trying to work on making it more accessible. Our data has been publicly available, but we're working to make it easier to use. And I think Karen can give some more specifics on that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a key moment in time. The demand for information that people can use has never been higher. So in the science community, what we've got to do is accelerate the pace of discovery, the pace of increasing our understanding, but also we've got to increase the pace of the uptake of that understanding by people who can use it.
That is Dr. Karen Germain.
And that, as Kate said, is really what the Open Source Science Initiative is about. It's about putting the data, the models, the algorithms, the science out into an open ecosystem to enable everyone to use it and to teach them how to do that and address the incentives that exist in the science community today that maybe deter openness.
I think one of the things that we heard and that we picked up over the past couple of days at this conference is the meeting people where they are. So the users, climate is local to them.
And that is Susie, Perez, Quinn.
and they have questions that are specific to their community or their issue. So is the issue flooding or is the issue agriculture? So putting the information out there and making it accessible is one key thing, and it's a big thing. It's also engagement with the people that need it and really kind of framing the question and then enabling them, maybe some training, some assistance on how to use the data. So then they're self-sufficient and they're empowered.
Can you dive a bit deeper into what NASA is doing on the entire field of climate change research?
So we do end-to-end research on climate, everything from observations, models, applied sciences, technology development, and also implementation in our own operations. So I'll let Karen talk a little more about observations and models, but I'll touch on the technology and implementation. So as part of a space agency, we're also an aeronautics agency, and we're developing a lot of technologies that can help people mitigate and adapt to climate, so respond to the challenges in their community. Our aeronautics team works with the aviation industry to reduce emissions. We're also developing technologies that can respond to changes in climate, things like combating wildfire or growing crops or water processing. All of these things that we develop for space can be used here on Earth. We're also experiencing climate change as an agency. So we have facilities on coastal and low-lying regions. We also have facilities out in California that are experiencing drought and wildfire. And we have to think about our own operations and our own resilience. And so we have some efforts on the East Coast of the United States where there is coastal inundation and sea level rise, where they're actually working to do dune restoration and mangrove replanting and thinking about how we can increase resilience and protect the infrastructure and ecosystems at our own properties.
Can I jump into that? You talked about you're active on the wildfire area as well. How does that look concrete? I mean, we are facing this year a number of wildfires already in Chile we are aware of, and potentially in the States as well. So what are you actively doing?
Yeah, the question of fires is, well, it's a challenge around the world and communities on every continent. And for us, the key is to look at the entire process. So what are the conditions before a fire happens that lead to increased risk? And this has to do with what is the condition of the vegetation? Is it stressed? Is it dry? What's the condition of the soil moisture and the groundwater? That relates directly to the fuel loads that we say are primed. What are the conditions that lead to the sparking of a fire? Many fires in the U.S. are started by lightning strikes. So there's a link to the imminent weather threat. So that's pre-fire. Then, of course, there's active fire detection, and we're finding now that we can detect fire from space often before someone on the ground phones the local authorities. So that situational awareness is helping the fire managers both in advance to pre-position and take early action as well as respond. And then equally important is the post-fire environment. Fires impact air quality downstream. They can create risk of cascading impacts like landslides and other kinds of threats to the environment. So it's the entirety of all of the phases that we look at and try to provide that actionable information.
Thank you very much. I heard very interesting terms, engagement, framing the question, enabling the communities to actually understand what the problem is. And from what I gather from this conference is that, at least here in Europe, there is still a sort of gap between the space community that is producing the data and everybody else, the political community, the community at large. We don't know how to move from the observation phase to the application phase. But I know that NASA has already started this process, both with political entities and with the general public. So I was wondering if you can explain us better how you're moving on these two communication levels to actually transform the potential, the observation phase into actually practical. I had another question to this. If you think that it's the role of the space agency to do that, because there is also something that I heard that we keep saying, well, who should do it? It should be an organization outside space, should be a governmental organization, should be new entities that we have not thought of. What do you think? What should be our role?
So within the NASA Earth Science Program, we have a dedicated effort that we call applied science. And we've had this effort going on for decades. We are now increasing the focus on it. But let me speak generally, and then I'll give you one example. In general, we find that we can amplify the impact of the understanding we get from space by working with partners, working with practitioner organizations that then have connections to their own audience. So let me give you one example. We have had a very focused effort over the last 2 years in agriculture. The first thing we did was go to where the agriculture community meets, go to the major commodities meetings. And the first year we went, we were a novelty. Everyone asked, why is NASA here? But they stopped by our booth. Well, this past year we went and we filled a room with farmers, with producers who are hungry for information. And we didn't go in saying, we have solutions for you. We went in, as Kate said, asking them what are their critical information needs, and then asking how we can partner with, for example, our National Corn Growers Association or university extension programs, organizations that already exist and have these relationships, and how can we enable them? So it starts with that engagement and listening, but then also really embracing partnership as a way to amplify the impact.
Yeah, and I just want to echo everything that Karen said. But, as you're thinking about the challenges that climate change poses and people making decisions, different people are making different types of decisions. So you have policymakers that are trying to identify, where do they want their country to go in the future. You have agriculture and producers that are looking at smallish scale. But then you have individual consumers thinking about what they're going to do. Those are different types of users. They need different types of information in terms of time scale, in terms of variables. They also receive information in different ways. We're not all alike. Some people like to read. Some people like to see. Some people like to hear. And so one of the things we do at NASA is partner. Karen mentioned some of our partnerships with other organizations that have those local ties and can help get that information out. We also partner with science communication experts within our agency and try to think about how can we communicate this best? What is the right way to tell the story so that people can meet it? And that means different formats. We have active social media, we have press releases, we have talks, we have apps. We do different things because different people process information in different ways.
I just wanted to jump in. So on the partnering level within the United States, Karen and Kate kind of mentioned what we're doing. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has offices in all states. NASA does not have offices in all states. That's why we need those partnerships, is to build off the resources that other people have and their expertise in the community. On the political side, it's a constant communication and education effort. The composition of the Congress changes every 2 to 6 years. So, depending on the House or Senate, you have different members that you need to educate. And I'll be really honest, except for maybe if they don't have a NASA center in their district or their state, space is not top on their list. So we have to find our way in to them and tell the story. If the story relates to STEM, if it relates to science education, if it relates to flooding, if it relates to aeronautics, if they have an astronaut from their district, we find the way in and we build the relationship. That's on the political level with the U.S. Congress. Within the government, I think there is a growing awareness of the value of space data. Some of that is not because of climate. I think Ukraine really, those pictures show people what's going on. More frequent disasters, space data in the United States is frequently shown either on the news or on print or on web medium as an example of a phenomenon, fire, or you can see the atmospheric rivers in California and the changes, the super bloom in California because of all the moisture after drought. You could see that from space. So we're seeing kind of space enter different mediums, but we have to tailor our message politically. Another thing that I picked up during this conference, so we talk about the trainings, and Kate talked about individuals needing information and how they take information in. I played around with the training that we have on remote sensing training, and it's really awesome. And it's really helpful and very, very easy to understand and very accessible.
Is it accessible for everyone?
Online, it is in English. There are some trainings that are bilingual and in Spanish as well. Yes, and I did notice ESA does similar online training as well. So that is not a unique U.S. effort, but it looks like our colleagues in Europe do that as well.
Thank you very much. I have an opinion to ask. So, of course, you see the space issue from NASA and a US perspective, and we see them from a European perspective. And I really would like to listen your informed opinion about what you think that we in Europe could do to improve, to bridge this gap, to improve what we do in terms of engagement with the public, engagement with the political structures, create a better value chain, a smoother value chain that goes from data to action. Because there is a bit of advancement. I don't think I'm going to say something unheard of. There is a gap between Europe and the States in that. And I'm really trying to understand how we as Europeans can at least try to improve on that side.
What I can speak to is what we found successful in the United States. And so I think, part of what we do is engagement. Part of it is transparency and openness, but sharing. So making sure that everything we have is publicly available, encouraging people to use it, providing these trainings, and then engaging with people. So things like when Karen mentioned earlier, the agricultural conference, finding those people that need information and talking to them about what we can do and listening. So hearing from them, that's a big part of when you think about data. We are experts in space-based data. We know how to use the satellites. We can be really innovative about what information we can get out of them. You have to listen to people to understand what they need. And so that's, I think, what we've found successful is talking, listening, and providing things openly and transparently.
And also what you guys did, you go to them. You do not wait for them to come to you. You actually go to them, which I think is something that is a very important lesson, because sometimes we are like sitting here and we're expecting people to come to visit us, which I think like what you guys say before, like, okay, we actually actively going to search for the people that might need us. I think this is very interesting.
But that is what you just described is an attribute in general of the science community. Often the science community interacts with itself. We have our own language that we speak. So it is a concerted effort to bridge those gaps, to focus our communications on even it's just the language that we choose to use, using language that is commonly understood, not the lingo. Because in science, words have very specific meanings that are not necessarily the dictionary meaning. So we do work hard on that translation, going to where the people are. But this is really where, again, I'll say it, the partnerships are important, because I don't have a team that can go to every single conference. So we have to use partnerships as a way to expand that reach. And when it comes to our European colleagues, I think there are certain areas where they're doing a terrific job and we're learning from them as well. So the partnership between NASA and our European space agencies is one of mutual learning.
We haven't really hit on equity. It is underlying in all of this because there are people that may not know or have not been touched by resources belonging to governments. We're finding that in the U.S. There's a concerted effort with respect to NASA and other federal agencies as part of the Biden-Harris administration to bring NASA, to bring other agencies impact and resources and programs to places that they haven't reached before. That's another way. You have a broader lens. You're trying to reach more people. It's more inclusive. This ties into where we go. This ties into engaging. This ties into using language that's inclusive. Science can be really exclusive, and it can be really eye-opening, and it can also be really intimidating. So I really wanted to just kind of touch on that equity piece, because when we go back now to climate change and the impacts, there are going to be disproportionate impacts on communities that do not have the resources. So we are very much working to try to build that up.
Thank you very much. I would like to come back, and I know we could talk here for hours about this topic because it's so fascinating to hear your input. One topic I would like to highlight again is the Open Source Science Initiative. Can you give our audience a better understanding what it is, when it kicks off, what status, who to address?
2023 is the year of open science. This year is kicked off, and part of what we're doing this year is really trying to communicate the value of open science. I come from the science community. All of this, the work I was doing was open source before, but I know that when I talk to people around the world and other scientists, they have concerns about open science. Like, is that going to mean less publications? Is that going to mean less other people will be using and contributing more science than they can? And so trying to explain to people the benefits of open science, that you have broader reach, you have more people working with you. So that's a part of it. The other is training on how to do open science. So it's one thing to put all of your data on a website. It's another thing to help people figure out how to use it. So making the tools and resources available, doing more trainings on the data and how to use it, and just trying to think about how to reach people and how to explain what we have. And all of that will enable more science, more collaboration, and innovation.
Kate, I think you really hit on it. It's the tools, it's the training, and it's tackling the incentives and explaining the value in terms of accelerating the science and accelerating the use of science. And of course, that's what really gets the scientists interested. They want to see the impact of their work increasing.
Anything you would like to add that we didn't address, something that you think it would be important to put out there?
I'll start with why we're taking this approach. As you mentioned earlier, when we look at the global drivers and distributed impacts of climate change, it would be easy to get discouraged. And we can't afford to. We can't afford to be discouraged because people don't take action from a position of discouragement. They take action from a position of hope. And I would like to leave us on a note of optimism that Kate talked earlier today about how there is a range of outcomes of climate change depending on human action. And the best of those outcomes is much, much better than the worst of those outcomes. So if we want the community to mobilize and make different decisions in the future than we have in the past, we've got to provide the information, and we've got to provide it in a way that allows and encourages people to take ownership of their decisions, because we want those better outcomes.
I think climate change presents challenges all around the world to people and ecosystems. And we know that there will be more challenges in the future with future warming. But we also know a lot about Earth and how it's changing, why it's changing, and where it might go. And every day we learn more. We develop new technologies. We understand the Earth better. And we know that in the future, how much warming we'll experience depends on future emissions. And so there is a lot of options we have available today to think about and respond to climate on Earth.
So I think you heard about somebody on, I think the panel I was on Monday talked about mission control. And I think that's something that our administrator, Bill Nelson, has talked about as well. And later this month, we're going to have a physical embodiment of Earth Information Center. It's a mission control concept where we'll show NASA data in a couple of specific ways and what's happening with our planet. We're hoping to, again, inform and meet people where they are on some of our key climate information. So wanted to share that is something that we're working on. Kate, I know you've been, Kate and Karen, if there's anything you wanted to add on the Earth Info Center that's on the horizon.
So it is launching this summer. It'll be both a physical space and a virtual space. The physical space is really about engaging and informing and inspiring. So bringing people in, showing them the information we have, telling them about things that might be happening in their communities. And that physical space in the initial phase will be in NASA's headquarters in DC. We're also working on a virtual platform because when people actually make decisions, they do that from where they are. And so having an easy way to find the information that's contained in that center, as well as links to other of our tools that can help people inform the decisions in their communities.
One of the most humbling things about my job is that when I tell people about the work we do in earth science, they're surprised. It's not what NASA has been known for over the years. So I'm really thrilled that actually the agency is fully behind the development of this public space where we can really share our understanding. It's a convening space. It's a space to learn. And it's a space where citizens can, for a moment, share the experience that the astronauts have the first time they look down at Earth and they see it as the beautiful, fragile gem of a planet that happens to be our home. So we want people to walk out inspired to take action.
Thank you very much. That's actually very interesting because you need to connect people to this type of feelings, because otherwise everything seems very abstract. If we just speak about satellites, people won't understand it. But if we speak about Earth and they see it, that's much more powerful. Thank you.
We couldn't be more grateful to have you here. So thank you very much, Karen, Kate, and Susie, for your very valuable time. And thank you for your team to make that impossible possible to have you here in one room. Thank you very much and hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
If you have further questions, reach out to us at radio@SpaceWatch.Global. If you like these or other episodes of Space Café Radio, leave us a rating on your preferred podcast platform. It is the currency of today. And if you want to stay on the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global and subscribe to our newsletters. And of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Torsten Kriening, publisher at SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space.